I never expected Thanksgiving to be the day my world collapsed. One moment I was carving turkey at my parents' Connecticut estate. The next, I was being publicly humiliated as they announced cutting me off financially. The betrayal cut deep, but finding out they had emptied my trust fund to buy my brother Tyler a lake house worth $1.2 million, that broke something inside me that I never thought could be repaired. The evidence trail led straight to their doorstep, revealing years of financial abuse I had been blind to. If you're watching this from somewhere, your family respects your boundaries, drop a comment below and let me know where you're from. Hit that subscribe button as I take you through the holiday that changed everything in my life. Growing up as Cobb Franklin meant living in the shadow of expectations. My parents, James and Margaret Franklin, built their fortune in real estate development across New England, turning the Franklin name into a symbol of wealth and influence in Connecticut's social circles. From an early age, I understood the weight that name carried and the responsibility that came with it. I carved out my own path as a financial analyst in Chicago, building a reputation based on integrity and smart investment strategies. My apartment overlooking Lake Michigan was modest compared to my parents' estate, but it was mine earned through hard work rather than family connections. At 32, I had achieved the independence most people dream of, though I still maintained ties to my family, despite our complicated relationship. The complicated part had always been my younger brother Tyler. 3 years, my junior at 29, Tyler had the charisma and confidence I lacked as a child. Where I was cautious and methodical, Tyler was bold and impulsive. My parents adored these qualities in him, even when his business ventures inevitably crashed and burned. The pattern had become predictable. Tyler would pitch some grandiose scheme. My parents would fund it. The business would collapse within months, and the cycle would repeat. "Your brother has the entrepreneurial spirit," my father would say, when I questioned their decisions. "Sometimes you have to fail big to win big." My grandmother saw through Tyler's charm. Before she passed, she established separate trust funds for both of us managed through the family's longtime attorney. Mine was set up with strict conditions about responsible financial management, while Tyler's had been depleted years ago on failed ventures. The invitation to Thanksgiving came with unusual requests. My mother called 3 times to confirm I would bring certain financial documents just to review some family matters. When I mentioned this to my girlfriend Amanda, she raised an eyebrow. "That sounds suspicious," she said, curled up on my couch with a glass of wine. "Why would they need your financial papers at Thanksgiving?" I dismissed her concerns. Probably just year-end tax planning. Dad always gets anxious about that stuff in November. The week before Thanksgiving, I received several calls from our family attorney, Walter Simmons. Each time his secretary said he needed to discuss urgent matters regarding your trust, but our schedules never aligned. In retrospect, I should have made time. The drive to Connecticut on Thanksgiving morning started with optimism. Amanda had decided to spend the holiday with her own family in Michigan, but promised to call that evening. "Remember what we talked about," she said before I left. "Boundaries are healthy, even with family, especially with family." The Franklin estate looked different when I arrived. New landscaping, a renovated entrance, and what appeared to be a completely redone east wing. These improvements must have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, which seemed excessive even for my status-conscious parents. My mother greeted me with her usual performative enthusiasm, air-kissing both cheeks, while commenting on my tired appearance and how I should visit more often. My father's handshake was firm, but brief, his attention clearly elsewhere as he checked his watch repeatedly. "Tyler's running late," he explained, though I hadn't asked. "He's bringing someone special this year." Tyler arrived 2 hours later in a brand-new Maserati, accompanied by his latest girlfriend, Sophia, a model with a Russian accent and impossibly high heels. My parents fawned over them both, my father practically beaming as Tyler tossed him the keys to check out the engine. "Just closed a deal with some tech investors," Tyler announced to the room, winking at me. "Finally hit the big time, big brother." During appetizers, The conversation revolved around Tyler's latest venture, something involving cryptocurrency and social media influencers that made little sense to me. What struck me was how invested my parents seemed in the details, nodding along, as if they understood blockchain technology. While helping my mother with wine selections, I glimpsed my father's office door ajar. Inside, spread across his desk, were documents bearing my name and what appeared to be account numbers I recognized from my trust fund statements. Before I could investigate, my mother steered me back to the dining room. Dinner began normally enough, with 16 guests, including several of my parents' oldest friends and business associates. The conversation flowed aided by expensive wine and my mother's talent for social orchestration. Then came my father's annual Thanksgiving toast. To family and future success, he began raising his glass, and especially to Tyler, whose entrepreneurial spirit has finally paid off. His new venture launches next month, and Franklin Investments is proud to be his primary backer. Glasses clinked around the table as I processed the name Franklin Investments. That was the holding company for family assets, including my trust fund. And while we celebrate Tyler's success, my father continued his gaze, shifting uncomfortably to me. We've made the difficult decision to cut financial ties with Cobb. The room fell silent. 16 pairs of eyes turned to me. We believe true independence comes from standing completely on one's own, my mother added smoothly. Cobb has a good job, and it's time he experienced real financial autonomy. The humiliation burned through me as family friends witnessed my public financial disowning. Across the table, Tyler struggled to hide a smirk behind his wine glass. More disturbing was the knowing glance exchanged between him and my parents, a look that suggested this announcement was just the visible part of something deeper and more calculated. That night, lying awake in my childhood bedroom, the confusion and hurt transformed into something else: suspicion. The documents on my father's desk, the sudden lavish spending, Tyler's unexplained wealth, and my parents' strange behavior formed a pattern I couldn't ignore. Something was very wrong in the Franklin family, and for the first time, I was determined to find out what. Sleep evaded me that Thanksgiving night. The walls of my childhood bedroom felt like they were closing in, each familiar object now seeming foreign in the wake of my parents' announcement. Around 2 in the morning, hushed voices from the hallway caught my attention. Pressing my ear to the door, I could make out my father's distinctive baritone. "The transfer is complete," he said in a tone I'd heard him use for business deals. "Walter confirmed it this afternoon, and Cobb suspects nothing." Tyler's voice unusually serious. "He was blindsided at dinner," my mother replied with a coldness that chilled me. "By the time he figures anything out, the accounts will be restructured and the paperwork buried." Their footsteps faded down the hallway, leaving me frozen with a growing sense of dread. Transfer accounts. These fragments painted a disturbing picture I couldn't fully comprehend. Morning came with forced pleasantries. Over breakfast, I attempted to broach the subject directly. "Dad, I saw some papers with my account numbers in your office yesterday," I said, watching his expression carefully. "Is there something going on with my trust fund?" His face remained impassive. "Just routine adjustments, son. Nothing for you to worry about. If it involves my money, I think I have a right to know," I pressed. My mother set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "You've always been too cautious with money, unlike your brother. That fund was meant to foster growth, not sit idle while you play it safe. Playing it safe built that fund into something substantial," I countered. "And now it's time for those resources to be put to better use," my father concluded with finality. This discussion is over, Cobb. I left Connecticut 2 hours later, the picturesque family Thanksgiving shattered beyond repair. On the drive back to Chicago, Amanda called as promised. "How bad was it?" she asked. "Worse than you can imagine," I replied, then recounted the evening's events and morning's confrontation. "Cobb, this sounds serious." Her voice dropped. "The first thing you need to do when you get home is check your accounts." The moment I reached my apartment, I logged into my banking portal. What I saw turned my blood cold. My trust fund, which had contained just over $1.2 million the previous week, now showed a balance of $812. A transfer labeled Franklin Family Holdings had emptied the account the day before Thanksgiving. Frantic calls to Walter Simmons went straight to voicemail. When I finally reached his secretary, she sounded uncomfortable. "Mr. Simmons is unavailable for the foreseeable future," she stated mechanically. "He's taken a sudden vacation to the Cayman Islands." Amanda arrived at my apartment that evening with takeout I couldn't eat and determination in her eyes. "You need to fight this," she said firmly. "What they've done isn't just wrong, it's illegal." The next morning, I contacted Jack Palmer, a financial investigator recommended by a colleague. Palmer was a former FBI agent specializing in white-collar crime with a no-nonsense demeanor that felt reassuring in my spiraling situation. "Family financial fraud is more common than people think," Palmer explained during our first meeting. "But what you're describing is particularly brazen." Over the next 2 weeks, Palmer uncovered a disturbing pattern. My signatures had been forged on multiple transfer authorizations. Account statements had been diverted from my address for months. Most damning was the paper trail showing the exact amount from my trust moving through a shell company and directly into the purchase of a property at Lake Winnipesaukee. The confirmation came through Tyler himself. Scrolling through social media one evening, I found his profile filled with photos of a sprawling lakefront property, "New beginnings at the new lake house." Read the caption under a photo of Tyler and my parents toasting with champagne on a massive deck overlooking the water. The date stamp showed it was taken the day after Thanksgiving. I called Tyler immediately, my hands shaking with rage. "Nice house," I said when he answered. "Thanks, bro. You should come visit when the weather warms up. The boathouse alone is bigger than your apartment," he laughed. Interesting timing on such a major purchase. I continued keeping my voice steady. Right after Thanksgiving. "Yeah, everything came together perfectly," he said, oblivious to my tone. "Mom and Dad said you agreed to help me out. Finally, putting that trust fund to good use, right?" His casual admission struck me like a physical blow. "I never agreed to anything, Tyler." A pause. "Well, whatever. It's done now. Mom and Dad handled all the details." "I bet they did," I replied before hanging up. Palmer's investigation deepened, revealing more than I was prepared to discover. This wasn't an isolated incident. My parents had been manipulating my finances since college, siphoning smaller amounts for years, using my excellent credit score to secure loans, and even taking out credit cards in my name. The lake house purchase was simply their boldest move yet. "They got greedy," Palmer explained, "and sloppy. The timing of the large transfer and the property purchase creates an obvious paper trail. More painful discoveries followed. Several family members had suspected something wasn't right, but stayed silent out of loyalty to my parents. My mother's brother, Uncle Robert, had tried to warn me years earlier with cryptic comments about keeping closer tabs on your money. I had dismissed his concerns as paranoia. The evidence mounted, painting a picture of systematic financial abuse spanning years. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. The betrayal went beyond money. These were the people who raised me, who were supposed to protect me, not exploit me. Amanda became my anchor during this time, along with a therapist who specialized in family betrayal trauma. Colleagues at work covered for me during days when functioning seemed impossible. The contrast between their support and my family's betrayal only highlighted the depth of what I'd lost. "You have two choices," Palmer told me after presenting his complete findings. "You can write this off as an expensive lesson about family, or you can pursue legal action." The thought of taking my own parents to court made me physically ill, but the alternative, allowing them to steal my financial identity and future without consequences, seemed equally unbearable. "They're counting on your sense of family loyalty to protect them." My therapist pointed out during a particularly difficult session, "Ask yourself who was being loyal to whom." After weeks of agonizing, I made my decision. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about breaking a cycle of exploitation that would continue as long as everyone remained silent. Preparing for legal action against my own family felt surreal. The conference room of Steinberg and Associates looked like any other law office with its leather chairs and city views. But the documents spread across the polished table told a story of betrayal that still seemed impossible. The evidence is substantial. Diana Steinberg explained a veteran attorney specializing in financial fraud, forged signatures, unauthorized transfers, identity theft spanning years. We have more than enough to pursue both civil and criminal charges. Jack Palmer nodded in agreement as he organized his investigation findings. The paper trail is clear. Your parents and brother conspired to defraud you of $1.2 million, but the additional identity theft and smaller thefts over the years bring the total closer to $1.6 million. Before proceeding, I insisted on giving my family one last chance. We sent a formal letter outlining the evidence and offering settlement terms, full restitution of all stolen funds, transfer of the lake house into my name, and written acknowledgement of their actions. Their response arrived 3 days later, not from them directly, but from their new attorney. Our clients categorically deny all allegations, the letter stated coldly. Family financial matters should remain private, not subject to outside scrutiny. Any legal action will be vigorously contested. Tyler took a different approach, calling late one night, his voice slurring slightly. "You need to back off, Cobb," he threatened. "Dad has connections you wouldn't believe. One word from him and your career is over. Is that worth it for some money you didn't even earn?" "I earned every dollar by being the responsible one while you burned through your trust fund," I replied. "And now you're living in a house bought with my stolen money." "It wasn't stolen," he snapped. "It was reallocated to someone who knows how to enjoy it. You were just sitting on it, like always." His words confirmed what I already knew in their minds. My money had always been family money, mine only in name, available for their taking whenever they deemed appropriate. The final breaking point came unexpectedly. On a Tuesday morning, as I was preparing for an important client meeting, my parents appeared in the lobby of my office building. My father demanded to see me creating a scene when reception asked him to wait. By the time I came down, a small crowd of coworkers had gathered. "There's our mentally unstable son," my father announced loudly. "Been having delusions about family conspiracy theories. We're here to take you to get help." My mother dabbed at fake tears. "We're so worried about you, sweetheart. These accusations, these threats. This isn't like you." Their performance was masterful. To observers, they appeared as concerned parents dealing with a troubled son. Only I could see the calculated manipulation, the public character assassination, designed to discredit me before any legal proceedings began. "I'm not going anywhere with you," I stated, firmly conscious of the audience. "Any communication can go through my attorney." "See how paranoid he's become," my father said to anyone listening. "Our own son, threatening us with lawyers." Security finally escorted them out, but the damage was done. Whispers followed me back to my office. Colleagues looked at me differently, wondering if there was truth to my parents' claims. That night, I called Diana Steinberg. "File everything I instructed, both civil and criminal charges, full pursuit." The legal machinery moved swiftly after that. Based on Palmer's evidence, the district attorney's office opened an investigation. Search warrants were executed on my parents' financial records, revealing even more extensive fraud than we'd initially discovered. The arrests made local news in both Connecticut and Chicago. Prominent real estate developers, charged with fraud and identity theft, read the headlines. Photos of my parents in handcuffs appeared on websites and evening broadcasts, their carefully cultivated social image shattered. Tyler panicked, listing the lake house for sale well below market value, desperate for cash to hire his own attorney when evidence implicated him in the scheme. Family, friends, and business associates distanced themselves, society connections evaporating in the face of scandal. The wider family fractured. Some relatives cut ties with me, viewing me as the traitor who brought down the Franklin name. Others called quietly to offer support, admitting they'd suspected improprieties for years, but feared confronting my parents. The court proceedings were brutal. My parents initially maintained their innocence, claiming they were simply managing family assets as they saw fit. But when faced with the mountain of evidence, including forged documents and recorded conversations Palmer had obtained, their defense crumbled. In a shocking turn, my mother broke down on the witness stand when confronted with proof of her signature on fraudulent transfer documents. "We did it for the family," she sobbed. Cobb never understood the importance of maintaining our position. The money was just sitting there while we had real needs. "And those needs included buying your younger son a lakefront vacation property?" the prosecutor asked. "Tyler has always been the future of the Franklin name," she replied, seemingly unaware of how damning her words were. Cobb was always too careful, too conservative with his resources. The judge's words during sentencing still echo in my mind. The betrayal of parental trust is among the most damaging breaches of faith possible. You didn't just steal money. You stole your son's sense of security and family. The court cannot allow such calculated exploitation to go unpunished, regardless of your social standing or previous reputation. My parents were sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Tyler received probation and community service in exchange for testimony, though the humiliation of losing everything seemed punishment enough for someone who had defined himself through wealth and status. As they were led away, my father looked back at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Was it regret, anger, or simply surprise that the son they had always underestimated had finally stood his ground? The days following the sentencing passed in a fog. Despite the legal victory, I felt hollow inside. The courtroom vindication couldn't fill the void left by the complete destruction of my family. I had won the case, but lost something irreplaceable. Through legal proceedings, I recovered approximately 60% of the stolen funds. The lake house had been sold at a loss. In Tyler's desperate attempt to liquidate assets, and legal fees consumed a significant portion of the restitution. Financial recovery would take time, as would rebuilding my credit score and untangling the web of fraudulent accounts opened in my name. Unexpected support emerged from corners of the family I had rarely connected with. Uncle Robert, my mother's brother, who had tried to warn me years ago, reached out immediately after the sentencing. "I should have been more direct," he admitted, over coffee in Chicago. "I saw signs for years, but convinced myself it wasn't my place to interfere." "Why did they do it?" I asked him the question that had haunted me throughout the ordeal. Uncle Robert sighed heavily. "Your parents have always had a warped sense of entitlement. When your grandmother set up separate trusts, instead of giving everything directly to them, they took it as a personal insult. In their minds, they were simply reclaiming what should have been theirs all along. And Tyler was their instrument, not the mastermind. He spent his entire life trying to earn their approval. Being the conduit for their financial schemes made him feel essential to them. These insights didn't excuse their actions, but helped me contextualize the betrayal. The problem had never been about money, but about control and a fundamental lack of respect for boundaries. Amanda had been my rock throughout the ordeal, but even she couldn't fully understand the complexity of emotions I was processing. With her encouragement, I continued therapy, gradually working through the grief, anger, and loss. "You're mourning the family you thought you had," my therapist explained. "That's different from missing the family that actually existed." 6 months after the sentencing, an opportunity arose for a position in Denver. The chance to start fresh in a new city felt like exactly what I needed. Amanda, whose remote work allowed flexibility, agreed to make the move with me. Our apartment in Denver's Highland neighborhood became the foundation for rebuilding. We established new routines, made new friends, created new traditions, untainted by past betrayals. Amanda and I grew closer through the shared experience of creating our chosen family, a network of friends who demonstrated what genuine support looked like. Drawing from my professional background and personal experience, I started a weekend financial literacy program for victims of family financial abuse. What began as a small workshop at a community center expanded into regular seminars and eventually a nonprofit organization. Helping others recognize and escape similar situations gave purpose to my painful experience. 1 year into my parents' incarceration, a letter arrived from the Federal Correctional Facility in Danbury. My mother's handwriting, once flowing and confident, appeared cramped and hesitant on the prison stationery. Dear Cobb, it began. Prison provides ample time for reflection. Your father and I have been attending therapy sessions and have come to recognize the harm our actions caused. We understand words mean little at this point, but we want you to know we deeply regret betraying your trust. When our sentence concludes, we hope for the opportunity to demonstrate we have changed and to rebuild some form of relationship, whatever boundaries you deem necessary. The letter continued with details about their prison routines, therapy insights, and expressions of remorse that seemed genuine if long overdue. It was signed by both parents, though only in my mother's handwriting. I read the letter multiple times, emotions cycling between anger, skepticism, and a small, unwelcome flicker of hope. Was genuine change possible, or was this another manipulation? Tyler reached out around the same time. His life had imploded spectacularly in the aftermath of the trial. With his reputation destroyed and parents imprisoned, the social circles that had defined his existence had ejected him completely. He was working as a sales associate at an electronics store in New Jersey, living in a studio apartment. I never understood what I was participating in, he claimed, during our first cautious phone conversation. I mean, I knew the money for the lake house came from you, but I thought it was all legitimate, just family helping family. You lived your entire life watching them manipulate people, Tyler, I reminded him, including me. His voice cracked slightly. I know. I think I always knew on some level. It was just easier to believe what they told me. These tentative reconnections required careful navigation. With Amanda's support and my therapist's guidance, I established clear terms for limited contact, complete honesty about the past, respect for my boundaries in the present, and no expectations for the future. Our parents accepted these terms from their limited position. Tyler struggled more occasionally, slipping into old patterns of manipulation before catching himself. Progress was inconsistent but not non-existent. The question of forgiveness arose frequently in therapy. Could I forgive them, should I? My therapist offered perspective that finally resonated. Forgiveness isn't about excusing their actions or pretending the harm never happened, she explained. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of constant anger. You can forgive without forgetting or allowing similar harm in the future. This framework allowed me to begin processing the betrayal in healthier ways. I would never forget what they did, and our relationship would never return to what it had been. But perhaps there was a path forward that allowed for healing without vulnerability to further exploitation. 3 years after moving to Denver, Amanda and I purchased our first home together. That Thanksgiving, we hosted a gathering of our chosen family friends who had supported us, colleagues who had become confidants, and even Uncle Robert, who flew in from Connecticut. As we sat around our table sharing food and genuine connection, I realized something profound. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately led to a stronger sense of self and clearer understanding of what family should truly mean. The trust fund, built with money, had been stolen, but I had built something more valuable, a life filled with authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation. The lake house built with stolen trust eventually sank under the weight of their deception, but from those murky waters I found solid ground to build a life that is truly mine. Sometimes, the family we choose recognizes worth that the family we are born into never could. And that recognition is worth more than any trust fund. If my story has resonated with you, I would appreciate you hitting that like button and subscribing to this channel. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with family members who crossed lines? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is struggling with similar challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember that standing up for yourself is never selfish. It is an act of necessary self-preservation. See you in the next video.